Hello and welcome to Fine is a four-letter word. My guest today is Scott Hackman. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We were just saying before when it was counting down into the recording that we are both excited to see where this conversation goes
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you never know. You never know. But let's just jump right into it and tell me what values and beliefs you were raised with
Mm,
that contributed to who you've become. And I when I ask this question, a lot of my recent guests have said, "Well, nobody ever said anything specific to me." And I don't think
mm.
most people do learn values and beliefs from something that was said. It's something that was modeled or something that they picked up intuitively. So what was it for you?
If I boiled it down, I would say helping others
Mm,
was modeled deeply ingrained into me from watching my grandmothers to watching my parents to participating in service. Uh, so many, so many really wonderful stories. I grew up on land that was populated by my heritage, like Swiss German, Anabaptist, Pennsylvania, brought over by William Penn, ninth generation farmers.
wow.
Um, so I was not a farmer. I'm like three or four generations removed from the farm. However, I grew up primarily in a house that was three houses down from my grandmother, my father's mom. And she would bring people into her home, she would cut their hair, she would make meals. And this is a woman that, lived through the Depression. So nothing was wasted.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite memories were as a result of being a highly sensitive child, which we didn't have that term at the time. That's what I am, or empath, or any of these words that are helpful in understanding oneself. Um, because of those abilities to have high sensation to things, I hated school because I
Mm,
hated the noise and
mhm.
I hated feeling everyone else's feelings. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. However, that's what it was. And I would get sick almost every day in junior high. And my mom was very gracious. I know she was very nervous about what was going on with my son. And some days when my mom would have to work, my grandmother would watch me. And I loved those days because Grammy would always have stale, frozen Philadelphia crimpets, which are like these little cakes with like vanilla icing, and give me mint tea from the garden. So like these acts of service, of generosity, of hospitality, of helping one another was like deeply embedded in my biology or my brain or my sense of values.
Did that make acts of service your love language?
Um, I
I don't know.
think
That just
no,
popped into my
it's
head.
not. It's
Okay.
I like the book. I like the frame. I think it's a helpful frame, especially in relationships of work or partnership, whatever it might be. Mine is words of affirmation.
Okay. All right.
And then I think
That's
second would be physical touch. So like people I'm close to, I'd love like a hug, like
uh-huh.
you know. So
Yeah.
that's me.
Okay, cool. So those acts of service were modeled for you as being something that was very noble and important. And
Yeah.
then how has that played out in terms of how you've lived your life to this point?
So like growing up, I would I would take on leadership roles. I didn't even know that's what I was doing at the time. Like anything from sports to music, bands. I played in rock bands. I was like the band therapist. I was the band helper. I was the band booking agent type of thing. We worked together, but that was me through high school and college. And I was the other thing I was raised with was a very, very grandiose view of uh, purpose, I think.
Mhm.
Now, I think there's like a shadow side to that, which I've worked through, which is I think everyone's special. Like I grew up with a sense that I was special,
Mhm.
so there's a lot of work to unlearn that and understand that with that there's a shadow side if you really do think you're special, and that maybe the reality is we're all special, and there are things in our life that can make it more challenging to see that within ourselves. And so because I was growing up with this sense of helping or service, and then this sense of grandiosity in that, I pursued big things. So I had high expectations. It started for me in actually faith community. So I grew up in a very religious area. Um, and then I pursued work in ministries, nonprofits, churches, and I built out development programs for youth and families. And I got into really big organizations, and I realized that that wasn't what I wanted to do. Um, so then it went back to school, understood different philosophies or theologies, really philosophies in helping, which come from like social impact, um, social entrepreneurialism, actually missiology, and just different perspectives. And my family started a business, and we had big expectations around our business, and it was in coffee. And we never realized our expectations in business. I think we realized the cultural values of it, and were able to sell it to someone who could carry it forward. And
Mm.
then beyond that, I learned about, when I was in that, through pain, through strengths and struggles and really pain, I learned a lot about my limitations and liabilities and weaknesses, and we began to get really good help, educational, therapeutic, advisory kind of help. And my wife and I got a lot of help. And that's when I learned about the field of helping. Like we have all these wonderful helpers in the world and professionally. And I mean, you're a helper. You're creating this environment where people can tell their stories and other people can listen, and they can find a sense of release, a sense of connection, a sense of connection to their own sense of values or agency to take a next step to do whatever they want to do. So I found out about helping specifically in consultation to ownership groups and leadership groups that are preparing for or making ready for succession and transition in their businesses.
When you say ownership groups, you mean business ownership?
Correct.
Okay,
Hmm.
I just wanted to clarify. Okay, and so you start because you had somewhat of a background in a family business. You'd been part of
Correct.
one. Yeah,
Hmm.
that was the direction you
Yeah,
you took because you could associate with that.
correct. Like the group that helped us then invited me to join them. I joined them. I worked with them, was mentored by a really good, great mentor, and got further training, coaching and that kind of thing. Um, Eventually went on for like leadership coaching and organizational performance, process consulting through the Society of Process Consultants training, which were stamps on kind of this experiential journey of helping, like, and really brought together a lot. I admire nerds. I admire researchers. I admire, like, I truly like the social sciences and the people that the body of work that I got to read a book about,
Uh-huh.
for anything from Frederick Laloh's Reinventing Organizations to Margaret Wheatley to Peter Block to Otto Scharmer to Keegan and LaHaye to Brené Brown. Like, these people helped me, like helped me because they were giving me language and frames for like, why are the systems I'm a part of or observing so oppressive? Why is this so hard? Why can't we just get to a place that's better? And it's because we're humans, and
Hmm.
because we've lived much longer with a sense of scarcity or a sense of fear or a sense of fixed mindset. We're trained, like we're literally trained and hardwired to be in that way. And I'm someone, going back to my childhood, who's highly sensitive, who's very emotionally aware, who, if I had the right training, I would have been like, I don't know if you know Mark Brackett and Permission to Feel, but I love his story because someone came along, which I think my Grammy was probably my uncle, but his uncle was an educator who came along and saw how painful his situations were
Hmm.
and just gave him language. My Grammy gave me actions, where his uncle gave him language. And so these books and these frameworks gave me language and ways to make sense of the crazy, make sense of the pain and suffering, make sense of how could it be that people who love me, why does this hurt so much?
Hmm.
How could it be that a community that espouses these kind of ideals can hurt people so much? Um, like, what what's going on here?
Yeah.
Um,
Like
and
getting
so,
under the hood
yeah,
and really examining things, whereas some people would just be like, because I personally would not be that into the weeds of things. Like
mm,
I'm not interested in that part of the
yeah,
things, but it's fascinating to me when you are,
yeah,
and that this is what makes the world go round, right? Everybody has different interests.
yeah,
So, but getting into it, and of course, because then it gave you a better understanding of yourself. And so the
correct.
better understanding of
Like,
the more you could understand yourself, the more you can help others.
and the more I could understand, I don't understand.
Yes.
And then I could start to let go of the frameworks. I could offer them for others. I could learn coaching. I could learn asking questions. I could learn actively listening, and I could witness people solving their problems or making selves better. And then what ended up happening is I was like, well, if I can help others, like how do I help myself?
Mm. Is
Like
that
it was like I was helping because I was so, it was so vulnerable to actually identify who I am,
mhm.
accept who I am, all of it,
Yeah.
strengths and struggles, light and dark, the whole package. And then go into the world knowing that's going to be weird, number one. And number two, like it's not to my kids. Well, maybe it is a little, but it's not in a negative way. Like they not only do they not reject me in the ages where they're supposed to reject us, they're they're so grateful that we're having conversations and identifying like, hey, this is where mommy and daddy brought in a high demand philosophy that came from a religious framework that's no longer workable for us, but we didn't realize when we let go of the framework, we actually still brought the behaviors in. So, can we talk about how you might have felt like there was a condition on love and acceptance? And our 15-year-old's like, yes, I can.
Wow.
Here are all the examples. And we can sit there and feel that sense of like, oh, that's hard to hear, right?
Mm.
And yet, like in hearing it, knowing, because I know through the work I do, what we're doing is we're restoring. What we're doing is we're giving opportunity for grief. What we're doing is giving an opportunity for a 15-year-old to make meaning in something that they might have had to carry with, and they might still have a lot of
Sure.
therapy to do it. Like I have no idea, but we're applying the therapeutic principles or the psychological principles or the spiritual principles that we've learned that are workable to make us
Yeah.
a little better, that to be helpful in our relationship with each other, with our children, and with our colleagues, and with our clients that also make us better.
I think that's so unusual and admirable.
I
So
don't know another way.
yeah.
Lori, I don't know another way, and I think that's partly because I don't know. You know the idea of like growth. You start off, you use all your strengths, you get to a place, and you like plateau, and then it's like, hey, if I'm going to go here, it's not what got me here won't get me there.
Right.
So you try the same old, and you're like, whoom,
Yeah.
like
Falling
what's
off the
happening?
cliff. Uh-huh.
Falling off, like what's happening? I think because my partner and I, Andrea, who I've been married to for 22 years and in business with, I want to say not 17, almost 17 years of that, three different businesses, and who are raising two just daring and remarkably intelligent young people, our children.
Mhm.
And because of that partnership, and I mean, we've had to remake our marriage at least three times. We think we're on our fourth marriage. So it started as the cornerstone of learning and development, and it would break down, and it would break down kind of at the same times in like career, and then these things would break down, relationships breaking down. And I think because of your first question, and you would have to interview Andrea, which might be an interesting thing to do. um, our blend of values, our blend of dynamic, our blend of falling down and getting back up worked. Like the chemistry worked, like, and so as a result of it, it created a safety to be like, I'm gonna go for it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, let's go for it. Let's see what happens.
Well, I think that's unusual too, because typically when a partnership breaks down, the two people go, "All right, I'm out."
Yeah. And I don't judge that. Like, I don't go like
No, it's
that's
not a
wrong.
judgment. It's just
Right, right.
again, you're doing things differently, and it's interesting.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
I Esther Perel, I don't know if you know her. I like
Uh-huh,
Esther
I do.
Perel with relationships. She talks about the cornerstone relationship, and I really do think Andrea is my cornerstone relationship. And the covenant we make has to get remade if things change.
Right.
Children
Right.
change things, businesses
Yes.
change things, like very pragmatically.
Yes.
We,
And both people have to be aware of that and buy into that
mm,
and
that's a good
be
point.
willing to
What do you,
remake it.
what do you think gets in the way of people buying into that?
Communication, expectations, the beliefs that you were raised with. I mean, so
Mm,
many different factors, beliefs about yourself.
hmm I love the word belief. I wonder if there's something about believing in yourself and being believed in by someone who knows you, strengths and struggles,
Mhm.
darkness and light, and accepts all of that.
Yes, I think that's imperative in a partnership and in uh, somebody's ability to achieve the highest level they can, to
Mm,
become the best version or their most favorite version of themselves.
oh.
Yeah. Since the show is called Fine is a four-letter word, tell me about the time when you were saying everything was fine and it wasn't fine.
Oh man, there are a lot of times. I think I'm just beginning to be like radically honest with myself and people. It's really uncomfortable.
Of
And
course.
the reason I would say that, so when was a time, I'll get there, but the reason I'm saying I mostly did that is because I think it was mostly a survival skill to people please, to not put a burden on someone because of how emotionally and psychologically unreliable my understanding of the world was, because of how emotionally, psychologically unreliable my family of origin was. Not because they failed or because they were bad people, it was because of trauma related to generate when I wasn't even alive
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
was passed into the system of their relationship that manifested itself in the form of disorders.
Yeah.
And anyone who's been touched by mental, emotional, psychological disorder and has carried the impact of that knows exactly what I'm talking about. And the majority, not the majority, but almost the majority of people now have.
Yes.
Like we're not a minority group.
No.
And yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, I don't know that it ever was a minority group. It just
Hmm
wasn't talked about.
hmm Yeah. So I think, so to answer your question, the reason I'm finding courage to let go of that survival skill of I'm fine, um, which I love the name of your, I think fine is a four-letter word. It's hilarious. I love that. The reason I'm willing to let go of it and learning the ability to let go of it is because I'm here, I'm alive, I'm very privileged, I'm very set in a way that is really, really, really healthy and good for myself, my wife, my children, my home, our business. And I'm like, okay, what's next? Like, what do you do? What do you do when Maslow's hierarchy of needs happens and you
Mm.
start to actually understand what he meant by actualization? It's not a cape or a character I've putting on. It's something I'm waking up with in a very creative way through my disciplines, through my practices and my habits to be like, who am I? What do you want me to do today? And how do I go about this in the most calm, clear, connected to my values, to sense of self, and and collaborative with other people, because we're completely designed for interdependence and making good things.
Yes. Yes. I love that you just said that we're designed for interdependence because that's something I've been saying for a long time as well, that humans have
Mm,
not evolved past needing human interaction.
right,
But with everything that's virtual now,
right.
people have a lot of people I think have come to the conclusion that they don't need to be interacting with other people. Like just
Yeah.
text me or just slack me. They don't
Hmm.
need a conversation. They don't need to be face to face with somebody else. They don't need human touch, but they do.
Hmm.
And that's why we're facing this epidemic loneliness in the
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
Uh, and right. So I love that. Yeah, we haven't evolved past this.
No, we may have devolved into a state of being because of our addiction to technology and
Yes.
dopamine hits from our phones. I mean, that quite literally is happening. Jonathan
That
Haidt's like
is. It is.
research.
I've seen it myself.
Well, I see it in myself. I'm like not above these
Yeah, no,
addictions.
I'm
Like,
not immune. And it's and and we recognize it.
mhm,
And so when you're aware of something, you can manage it, you can fix it, you can, address it.
yeah,
And most people are not even
yeah,
aware. But that's a whole other conversation. You said something that I want to go back to. You said your practices and habits
yeah.
that have helped you. What are those?
So I love Atomic Habits, the book. I think his
Oh,
research was
so
super
good.
helpful. So
Are,
good.
are
And
you on his
this,
newsletter? Do you get his
yes,
newsletter?
he's
Yes,
amazing.
I
He
highly
deserve
recommend James Clear for
James
my
Clear.
listeners. Yes, get on his
He
newsletter.
he deserves the millions of followers and the millions of dollars he has earned. He's helped so many, including me. So the idea of habit stacking has been tremendously helpful from the standpoint of morning and evening and habits. So I, in order to do that, one of the things I had to become aware of in order to have a discipline practice is that I had learned helplessness.
Mm.
And I had learned helplessness because the longevity of the story that I lived through mental and emotional instability or mental and emotional disorder through like a family system and through my own experiences with those things like depression and debilitating anxiety, um, depression to the point of um, trigger warning, suicide. I don't know if you do that on yours, but like
Hmm.
suicidal ideation, plan to commit, suicide, hospitalization. So because of the debilitation of those experiences, somewhere along the line, I don't know really how, I'm not really that concerned anymore. I learned a helplessness story that I couldn't move past some things.
Mm.
Through about 9 years ago, I was introduced into a recovery mindset and a growth mindset. And recovery and growth mindsets, I think, work really well together. And the reason I think they work really well together is because recovery says you got to basically accept reality, that you have something that's unmanageable in your life. I think we could all just like take inventory right now and be like, is there something unmanageable?
Well, I think life itself is often unmanageable. Just the fact that we're living it's not even in a time, like just
Yeah.
humanity, being a
Yeah.
human is unmanageable.
Right. Well, but then you can dial that in and you can be like, okay, well, what do I have control over? I have control over my attitude. I have
Right.
control over my effort. I have control over what I do with my awareness
Hmm.
or regulation, communication, those type of things. The reason I think recovery is such a helpful lens, it gets stigma, so people don't approach it kind of outside of having a substance or a process disorder. Um, However, I think it would be really great if everyone approached it. If they feel like they have something unmanageable and they just say, okay, what's my reality? What's unmanageable? Okay, accept it. I accept it's not my fault. I accept it's my thing. I accept I can't do this alone. Once you start to move through that, which by the way comes from Laura McCowan's book in recovery, which she has two, The Luckiest Club and Push Off From Here. I think she gives a really wonderful frame, regardless if you have a disorder as it relates to a substance or a process. But once you begin that path of acceptance, then you start to become aware or open to what might actually be helpful,
Mm.
what might actually be workable. So learned helplessness is, you're going to come and solve and fix this problem for me. Learning my own sense of agency or self leadership is to say, oh, wow, there's something inside of this heart. There's something inside of this mind that wants something, that values something more than this behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to move towards this unknowing future. And all of a sudden, helpers start to show up.
Yes.
And you're like, what's happening? Well, this is a spiritual experience if I've ever heard of one.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is. And then you go, oh, I'll take that. I'm going to try that thing, habit. Oh, that's workable. So, like, really pragmatic. This has evolved over 9 years for me. And I'm someone who's come from religious order, structure of high demand. Someone will kill you. A deity will kill you if you get this wrong. You
Mm.
will be punished and perpetuate your life in a punishment state. So that's my framework. And I go back in to another frame. And by the way, I still have a spirituality and a faith. And I've actually reclaimed parts of that religious training into my faith and my spirituality. And that is directly correlated with Brené Brown's research. Those that have been traumatized or abused by religion will restore their sense of clarity of spirituality through reclaiming parts of it that they can still
Interesting.
identify with. And it will actually help them. And I'm not saying everyone has to do that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just saying this has been my path. So then
Yeah.
the habits that start to form are like, well, that worked for you. I'm going to get up earlier. Well, everyone wants to get up earlier. I can tell you it has taken me a long time. I'm not a morning person. I was up at 3:30 this morning. I was up
Yeah.
at 3:30 this morning because to get everything I need to get done, to be clear for everything that was ahead of me, I know exactly what I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get up. I have to make my coffee. I have to start with water to take care of my business. I have to take a walk if I can that morning. If I can't take a walk, I go right to my chair. I put on Insight Timer or some other form of meditation. I'm guided. My algorithm's dialed in right now, so it usually finds me.
Mm-hmm.
I pull out a journal and I write a love letter to myself, which doesn't come from me. It comes from Liz Gilbert. And I'm affirming who I am, what I'm to do in the world today from a place of love, from a place of acceptance, from a place of unconditional mercy and grace. Where
Mm-hmm.
does that come from? I think it comes from whatever you want to call it that it comes from. But it doesn't come from me. It comes from
Right.
something greater than me that happens
Right.
to touch me in that moment.
Yes. I love that you're describing your morning routine because it's again so unlike most people's way to start their day. You are very intentional about how you're starting your day. And
Well,
so
thank you.
therefore I'm imagining that the rest of your day, not that things can't, surprises don't pop up and
Mm.
wild clowns and whatever, but
And
but
I'm
you're
very excitable, Lori. I'm
okay.
very excitable and colorful. And
I love that. So it's not that unexpected things won't happen.
nope.
However, your day is set with intention.
Yeah,
Whereas compare that to the majority of people who open their eye, their alarm goes off, they open their eyes, they pick up their phone, they start scrolling through social, they're looking at emails, they
yeah,
are immediately thrown into anxiety,
100%. I
and
can't
that's
open
how
my
their
phone
day
in the morning.
starts.
Well, when I do, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like if I open my phone before an hour of me doing something, it's consider I should go back and take a nap. I should cancel every
Start over.
meeting and just sleep for like an hour or two and do it over again.
Yeah, hit the
Honestly, I'm
reset
not,
button.
it sounds overly like aggrandized, and I mean it. Like it is qualitatively different.
Yes.
The results that we're seeing, my my wife, my partner and I, the results we're seeing in the quality of relationships, in the quality of business, in the quality of our team members, in the quality of our clients. This is not like been happening for 9 years, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
like this fruit or this result or these outcomes. This is like the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just starting. I feel like I'm just beginning. And I could die and I'm cool. I'm
Yes.
so grateful that I even got to witness it. And I do believe that the things would go forward. Just like my Grammy died and the things have gone forward. What
Mm-hmm.
she said to me when she was on bed rest, um, she said this to me. This is so my Grammy. Her name was Alice. She was like firecracker, like just fiery, quilted, knitted, recycled everything before that was a thing.
Uh-huh.
She was like
I can just imagine her.
fruit flies everywhere because she's just like recycling it all. She's like, ah. Two things she said. One, the doctor said, you got to stop gardening. She said, what's wrong with meeting God in the garden? Right to his face. Second thing, she's laid out bed rest on her back, breathing through a machine. I'm sitting there. This is when she was in her house before she was in the hospital. And she's probably like 4'11". I'm 6'4". Like we don't know why I'm this tall.
All the Grammys are small.
Yeah.
Mine
And
were.
she's like she's laying back and she's like smiling, right? And I'm like, Grammy, why are you smiling? And she's like, I was like, what do you see? She's like, I see a garden. I see flowers. I see sun. And I'm like just full bawling, barely can talk. And she's
Mm-hmm.
just smiling. And I'm like, I wish I could see God because that's what she was seeing to me.
Mm-hmm.
She was seeing God. And she goes, oh, you can. No, I said, I wish God would speak to me like he does to you. And she goes, he does. You just move too fast.
Mm. Wow.
And that's what my Grammy's still with me. I
Yes.
mean, my Grammy's still with me. I know it.
100%.
We still talk. We're good. She's super thrilled. She's super pumped for her great grandchildren. She's into it. Um, it's amazing. And I am now sitting still. I'm just beginning
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
to
after
sit
nine
still.
years. Right. But this is the thing though. That people who are listening is it you probably felt a difference when you first started doing it.
Oh,
Like there is
yes.
an immediate difference and then there is a cumulative difference
Yes.
when you continue doing it consistently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the habit stacking. So all those habits build out over time. Like at first, it was literally
Mhm.
like a 1 2 minute reading. I would get a text every day from a buddy and I'd read it.
Mhm.
It'd take me 1 minute. Then it was, I happened to journal my whole life because I had been in therapy since I was like 13.
Yeah.
I've been misdiagnosed over a dozen times. This has all been clinically done. Finally, in
Mhm.
my 30s, it was done. That's when we knew. And I was misdiagnosed over a dozen times, and I was mismedicated, I think, roughly the same, 12 to
Mm.
15 times. I mean, so when I talk about learned helplessness, I think once I got to see this turn, basically the turn for me where I stopped saying I'm fine. I was 30. I was in the hospital after my sister intervened, after I was about to ruin everything and
Mhm.
take my life. She got me inpatient, and that's when the psychologist did the thing and did the brief and basically said like these are all the things that are true. You don't have a disorder. This has been your life. Like this is what has happened.
Mhm.
You develop this way of living which is not workable. He didn't use
Yeah.
the word that. My
Right.
new therapist uses workable. I think it's a phenomenal word.
It
I
is.
recommend we all use it. Workable, not perfect. Just like what's the next
Yes.
workable step? What's the
Oh,
next workable
yes.
plan? I mean, he's a genius. Uh,
Writing
so,
this
but
down. Next workable step.
next, like, what's the next? Who am
Yeah.
I?
Yeah.
Listen to your heart. Who am I right now in this moment? What do you
Yeah.
want me to do? And what's my next workable step?
Yes.
Holy, like all that chaos, all the crazy gets to just settle down. And here's
Mhm.
the challenge though. Here's what's going to happen when you start doing this. Your relationships are going to feel an earthquake because we've been, a lot of us, the helpers, the hurt, the like broken. We're sensitive. We're simply fundamentally sense and feel the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's what is happening. And we've all created maladaptive ways to cope with that, and we all are breaking free. And once you start breaking free and you start finding your workable path, you start identifying who you are, what you want to do, what's workable, how you want to be in that moment, people won't know what to do
Right.
because your way of being was holding them up. It was holding them in their place. They needed you to be that way.
Right. They needed you to be that way because that helped them feel comfortable.
Correct. And
Yes.
it's really uncomfortable when you start changing at 40 or
Right.
45 or 55 or 65 or
Yeah.
85 like my grandmother did.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable.
And it's still worth it.
It's 100% worth it.
Oh my gosh,
It's
Scott,
the
this
only it's the only thing worth it. I literally don't know much. I get to see a lot. I get to see a lot. I genuinely get to see remarkable, amazing, almost miraculous things happen where literally heavily traumatized business owners who've lost everything and rebuilt everything and have accumulated absorbent wealth start to become open and aware of what they want to take forward and how they want to reinvest in 5 forms of capital: emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, and financial. And they're not driven by the tax plan or the wealth plan, but they're driven by the human plan because what
Mhm.
they actually care about is love for what's coming next. Not everyone, but the people I get to be invited in to walk alongside, that's what they care about. And it's pretty wild to watch. And we've built a whole national team to help them in each of their areas of development: management, board, ownership, and family.
Mm.
It's wild.
Yes, that is phenomenal. We could keep talking for another 2 hours.
Okay,
And
we have to
and
wrap it up.
we do need to wrap it up. Before we go, 2 questions. One,
Yeah.
clearly you what did you say you were excitable?
Yes, I'm excitable.
I could tell. Which is I love that you've brought that enthusiasm into our conversation.
It's
So
who I am.
what is the song that you listen to when you need an even additional boost of energy?
So I wrote a book. It's coming out next year. It's called You're Not Alone. On a Saturday morning, I was like, I need a playlist for this book. So I made one. It's called You're Not Alone by Scott Hackman on Spotify. I think you can find it. I'll give you, I'm going to give you 2 from that playlist because
Okay.
I need music that can kick me down and
Uh-huh.
feel my depth of sadness and loss and take
Okay.
me back up.
All right.
So I will listen to You're Not Alone by Saosin, Saosin, because I'm
Okay.
an indie rocker from
All
way
right.
back in 2000,
I
late
like it.
90s. And they're like emo post hardcore band. Or I'll listen to Mystery of Love by Sufjan Stevens, Sufjan Stevens. And I'm going to give you one more
Okay.
from Fred again, Kyle, I Found You. Those 3 songs will
Okay.
open your heart and lift your spirit.
How about this? Send me the link to the Spotify
Yep,
playlist and I will put that in the show notes.
perfect.
Okay, fantastic. And then if someone wants to continue a conversation with you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Sure. So you can, this group, whoever listens to your stuff, you can send me an email, Scott at scotthackman.com, or link in to me at Scott Hackman at LinkedIn, or Instagram, Scott Hackman. My Instagram and LinkedIn are different. Like LinkedIn's very business. As I launch the book, I'm going to really focus my Instagram on, you'll get a lot of like what I'm listening to, what I'm reading, what I'm like, I just post it on my reels all the time. So
Cool. Are those links on your website? The links to
I
your
will
social?
send, I'm going to send you an email,
Okay.
my
So I will have
Instagram and LinkedIn.
okay, cool. I will have the links to that in the show notes so we'll make it really easy for people to be able to reach you.
Great.
And thank you so much for joining me today on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thank you for having me. You're a wonderful host.